If you're in the agency space or you have a need to continually purchase data at scale, there are and one of the things that you'll often encounter is at some level cost per lead when it comes to not the actual qualified lead as such, but cost per data, let's say, so cost per email or cost per email plus phone number when it comes to any level of outreach that you're doing. And pretty quickly, if you do want to scale, this is for those who are already in the scaling stage. I would always advocate that do things that don't scale to begin with, because quality of messaging and then aggressively testing and rotating between different types of messages with smaller batches of emails as an example to identify the winner and then scaling. So split test at a small level and then scale is a better way to do it. But assuming that you've already crossed that threshold in your inner stage, or you want to ignore that threshold, because I know there's always going to be some level of, let's say, people that like to do things in bulk, the question or the challenge becomes paying for data. So look, practically speaking, these are some of the insights that we've garnered over the years at Pearl Lemon from having spent probably it's not, I mean, a lot is relative, but we spent over £100,000 for literally data. And along that journey, as you can imagine, we have continuously sought ways to try and optimize and bring down our prices to make the operation more lean, more profitable, more cost effective, all of the stuff that you would expect. So I'll give you some of the insights that have been helpful for us when it comes to the management of data. So number one, we tend to look at purchasing as many lifetime deals that exist in the marketplace as possible. So you'll find platforms such as AppSumo. You'll also find Facebook marketplaces and in forums marketplaces where there's a lot of reselling happening to databases. So that's one way that you can get access to data. That's bucket number two. The other third thing that you can do is that you can pull together fundamentally with friends or with any networks that you have a group buy, because there's still a lot of tools that allow multiple users to log in under multiple IPs to log in under one user, or you can use, of course, a VPN and do it that way. But in the past, I think with Built With, that was a tool that we were using to get access to the highest premium package. And I purchased that with a couple of people to bring the prices down. So that's option number three. Option number four is that if the tool is small enough, you can actually negotiate with any vendor. You can even negotiate with the big vendors. You always have the opportunity to negotiate. And what we tend to do at Pearl Lemon is we do the three strikes and you're out rule. So what I mean by that is that we ask, much like in sales, can we have a discount in three different ways? And we wait until we get three no's before we accept that we can't get a discount. But by the time you get to the third no, much like email follow-up, you do tend to get actually a discounted rate. And it tends to work more often than it doesn't, especially when a tool isn't a huge tool where they don't need to negotiate. But the truth is, even with the bigger tools, ZoomInfo being an example, I think I don't know if they're a publicly traded company. I believe that they are, but they do millions. And in any event, through negotiation, we were able to aggressively bring down the actual sticker price. So you can do it irrespective of size. So that's the other bucket. The other area of this niche, this space is it's something that you hear from, let's say, successful people, but you find people that have already solved that problem for you or have solved that problem. And when it comes to access for data, as you can appreciate, again, I'm such a huge fan of developing economies. There's people in developing economies that make a living off either selling or supplying data. These people spend all their time on this problem. And if you're a business owner, you definitely do not spend all your time on this problem. So go to them and see if they can provide the keys to the kingdom, if you will, because they will often already have solved that problem for you. And then it's just a case of going to the marketplace, i.e. practically that might be a freelancing platform such as Upwork, that might be Facebook groups or whatever platform that you choose, but putting up job posts effectively saying, I need unlimited access at a flat fee for these types of data. Can anyone help me who's an expert data scraper? And then you will begin to receive applications, if you will, of those who have already solved that problem. And by systematically following some of these strategies, we have been able to bring down our data costs by several hundred%. So what actually happened when I talked to you about the £100,000 spend, perhaps a little bit in excess of that, the vast majority of that, if we put it over a timeline, it was spent in the early stages, because that was when we went through the valley or the valley of ignorance, if you will, where I didn't know better, so I would just pay for access because that was that. But as you, of course, grow and develop and you learn through your, let's say, costly mistakes or exorbitant impact it has on your cash flow, we sought ways to bring the cost of data down. And then the other element of it, especially if you're in a space where you have an infinite, not an infinite, but a huge market. So if you're in, for example, the HVAC space or the home repair space, then if you can target homeowners, you have a huge database you have access to, really. Then what that means, and it's the same with agency owners can oftentimes target any business in the world effectively if you're selling marketing services. And the same thing applies to many, many services, accountants, lawyers, etc. What that means is there will be people that have access to huge databases that have already paid ahead of you. And what that also means is identifying these types of people, number one. And we have gone to other agencies as well and said, look, we're trying to build data. We're happy to pay to share access to data. So you can pull together effectively in that kind of group buy scenario. It does work. And if you are someone who networks, you can just ask your network and say, look, I'm trying to find more cost-effective ways or to share logins or to share costs for data. Does anyone want to do it? So that's a big thing. And then also the other way to potentially reframe it is what access to data already exists out there that's publicly accessible, and of that data, easily accessible data, let's call it, so EAD for the purposes of this video. A simple example is if you scrape content from directories, Google Maps is the world's biggest directory in many senses. I say that anecdotally, I'm not sure, but let's just take Google Maps. There's a lot of companies that have email information on directories because they are in the business of listing the actual contact information on directories. So then it's just a case of considering, well, for example, the directory databases that publicly exist, which of these could be my target customer? So a simple example then might be if you're an agency owner, what about all of the vape shops in the UK? What about all of the private medical practices in the UK? So you could then look at high profit and or high revenue businesses that are typically small in size but big in revenue. And what that might mean is that if you email their info at that's available on a Google Maps, a Yelp or a Yelp directory, that you might actually still get through to the decision makers within the company by nature of the size of the business. So, and then also what's interesting, if you are someone who's in the world of cold calling, as an example, there is still publicly accessible data on LinkedIn as well as on Google Maps where people are putting mobile phone numbers down. It's only 1 or 2 steps away from the actual decision maker. So that's another way to look at it. And simply put, one of the things that we're doing right now, to give you an example of what that looks like practically, for our catering business, one of the areas that we do well in is bubble tea. So we do corporate bubble tea catering where we'll go in. So we did an event with, for example, Wise, who are known as TransferWise. They're I think $1 billion, financial services company that are based, or rather they were founded in London. And I think they've still got their HQ here. But in any event, they rebranded from TransferWise to Wise. We did a bubble tea event for them. So what has come as an offshoot of that is that we do a lot of bubble tea training, and we have restaurants or, for example, sushi places that want to expand and offer bubble tea on their menu. So we're doing an email campaign at the moment, contacting cafes and small restaurants within those niches that are interested in expanding their menu, coffee shops as well. So cafes, coffee shops, same. I'll use them, but we're doing email outreach through fundamentally scraping Google Maps, and we're getting a relatively decent reply rate because that's all we need and that's who our target market is. So build that in as a consideration when it comes to your data in the instance that you have a huge potential pool of customers, because then it's just a case of identifying, well, what data is easily accessible, and from this data set, who is my target customer, and let's just go after those guys, and thereby that will bring down your costs as well while still offering the same results. So if you follow some of these strategies, simply put, you'll save a bunch of money and be able to scale the volume of outreach that you do.